Hey, Carti, I can hear your sounds in there. Okay, you got it. You got
I can hear your sounds too.
it. Yeah. Hey, man, you got to be enjoying the ice rink, right?
Wow, no, it's too cold. It's yeah, nobody will want to go out and skate at -8.
You know, yeah, it's going to, they say next Monday it'll be 40 degrees.
Really?
Yes, 40 degrees. But I guess with all the snow and ice on the ground, it'll probably be 10 degrees less.
I got about 30 seconds. I'm cutting the mics, guys.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Carti. How you doing, man?
Man, I am feeling good. Blessed. It is -7 degrees outside, so I dressed warm for today. How about you, Earl?
Hey, man. It's a blessing that I'm not outside.
I feel you on that.
You know.
Well, I'm think it's a blessing if the heating system is working in your house. Just think of the poor people who woke up this morning and found out that their heat was off.
Oh, yeah.
You know, oh, by the way, that's none other than my co-host, Sandy Williams. Good morning to you, Sandy. How you doing?
I'm inside and the heating system is working, so it's all good. Yeah.
You know, I asked you off the air about the ice rink. You got to be excited. Last year was too warm for the ice rink, but not now.
No, this year's been great. I've had a bunch of kids skating on it, and but -8, nobody's volunteering to go out and ice skate today.
Well, you know, listen, we've got so much to talk about. I kind of want to begin with an edict that came down Judge Borowski in Milwaukee. Milwaukee Public Schools has been mandated by the state legislature to put SRO officers in the buildings, and 25 of them. And so, you know, the state legislature demanded that they put these SRO officers in the buildings.
And that's because these state legislatures have all spent so much time in the Milwaukee public schools that they know just what the formula is, right?
You know, Sandy, it is more than frustrating. I spent 12 years volunteering in Milwaukee public schools, and I was in the buildings when they had SRO officers. And the SRO officers, for the most part, nice guys, but they would say themselves, there's really no reason for us to be here. I mean, this is just the truth. I would not fabricate this. There's safeties in the buildings whose responsibility it is if there are fights or things like that. The police aren't getting engaged or involved in students having disagreements or fights or those kind of things, unless it's something massive, which happens so rare. And so, so you've got these officers who are sitting around, Sandy, in the buildings, twiddling their thumbs. And they could be better utilized out in the street where, there's so many issues and so many problems in our community. And yet nobody talks about that because the people at state legislature who made these mandates did it basically, for no other reason that they could.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would call it fiddling with. They find it convenient to fiddle with the Milwaukee public school system. And they're dilettantes. It's not like they're trained educators or like they actually have firsthand experience with what's going on in the Milwaukee public schools. We have a concept under the state constitution called local rule, in which the state legislature is supposed to sort of stay out of matters to the extent possible so that the localities with their firsthand experience can manage themselves. And yet we do find the legislature kind of intervening at its pleasure to play with, particularly the Milwaukee public system. They don't tend to do this with Oconto Falls or any of the other school districts around the state. But it's one of the things that's different about states and court orders in states is that states do have mechanisms for enforcing their court orders. They have sheriffs, and the sheriffs are actually responsive to the courts, and it's different at the federal level. So when we have Donald Trump thumbing his nose at the law, we don't really have a process for enforcing that law against him. But that wouldn't be the case necessarily with the Milwaukee public schools.
Sandy, Mark says in a text, MPD receives 3,700 dispatch calls each school year on average between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. related to Milwaukee public schools, addresses the Journal Sentinel found after reviewing September 2013 to July 2024 data. But I will say this to you, Mark, again, as somebody who spent 12 years in Milwaukee public schools and was there when there were those SRO officers. I don't know if you're aware, there's 156 schools, buildings in Milwaukee public schools. You're demanding 25 SRO officers who are going to cover 156 schools. It's kind of an insane proposition to think, because some of those MRO officers were not moving, Sandy, from building to building. They were in specific buildings, and that's where they were for that entire day. And so, it's kind of trying to, have a flea take on an elephant. You can't do it. And so this process or this thought that we're going to fix Milwaukee public schools, I'll say this to Mark and others who fail to understand. I'm not saying it can't happen, but Mark, there haven't been any shootings in the buildings in Milwaukee public schools. When people think that a police officer in a building is going to stop somebody from who decides that they're going to shoot up buildings, Sandy, we've seen this far too many times. It's not something that that you can foresee, right? I mean, you can't tell if somebody's going to decide to come into a building and shoot up the place. And so if there's fortunate enough to have a SRO officer in the building where it happens, God bless him.
Well,
But the chances of that happening is rare.
Yeah, the person texting this is speculating about why it is that maybe this is to keep the heat off the Milwaukee Police Department.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that this was done at the initiative of the Milwaukee Police Department, or
No, they didn't want it.
They didn't want it. So, I mean, everyone wants to speculate and come up with a revisionist theory as to why this might have been a good idea for legislators outside of Milwaukee to decide how the police and the Milwaukee public school system ought to cooperate and complement one another in terms of how they conduct themselves. But this is silliness, I think, in that it's a wrong focus for a state legislature. If they want to help the Milwaukee Public School District, they could find plenty of better ways to do that. One of them would be with funding.
Sandy, the judge was talking about contempt. How do you enforce Milwaukee Public Schools and the city, because they both were, debating on who's going to pay for this. How would they enforce a contempt rule against a district or a city?
Well, that you can only enforce against people, right? So the contempt act, the contempt would be punished by putting somebody in jail, some official in jail, or threatening them with being jailed, or with some other kind of financial response, financial penalties for days of contempt.
Yeah, and I was watching Judge Borowski, and he was really getting testy. And listen, I'm not opposed to any of those things. The law was created, and created by people who just could do it, and that's why they made the decision to do it. Tony says, I remember a fair amount of coverage of SRO officers not doing anything during school shootings in Florida and Texas. I mean, we got to stop believing that because you have SRO officers in the building, Sandy, they're gonna fix what the problems are. So these 25 police officers, and I have to say, the ones that I knew, and they've got to be trained. And right now, none of them are trained, Sandy, from what I was reading in the article. It takes a while to train them. And yet the judge said they've got 9 days. If they don't get this together in 9 days, I guess there's going to be hell to pay. Well, they don't have anybody in the hopper to be trained, Sandy. So,
Well, I think having a state legislature toy with the Milwaukee public school system this way, and with the police department in Milwaukee, is symptomatic of what's going on, which is at the national level as well. Politicians who have contempt for the knowledge and expertise of the people who are actually operatives in government. In fact, contempt would be the main word I think they have, and they believe that they, with their inexperience, are fully capable of calling the shots and making decisions that ought to be made based on expertise and training. And so it when you look at it on the local level, you can see exactly how this plays out and how it might be foolish. But when it's happening on the federal level, it's going to have its ramifications all over to all of us locally. But there is clearly ongoing in Washington right now a great deal of contempt on the part of politicians for people who operate in government, people who have the expertise to be long-term professional employees in government. And they're all being treated as if they're part of a herd that can be simply culled. Doesn't matter who you fire. It doesn't matter who you lay off. It doesn't matter. These people don't matter.
Well, Sandy, we're going to get into a lot of that conversation this morning about the impact of these decisions that have been made or that are being made on the fly. Sandy, decisions that are going to impact and affect the American people. I was saying to you earlier, and we're going to get into this, just how frustrated and angry I am as we watch more and more of this government being taken over.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that people say all politics is local. Well, you know what? The effect of politics is local. And the way we're going to experience a recession, the way we're going to experience inflation, the way we're going to experience the loss of regulation through OSHA and safety regulations and environmental regulations, all of that rubber hits the road locally. Okay. So it turns out all politics is local.
All right, 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. And we're going to talk about how this affects you, all this affects you locally on the Earl Ingram Show.
town, and I live in a small town. I've been down in a small town, oh, the small communities. All my friends are from small town. My parents live in the same small town. My job is a small town, but that's little opportunity.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And Sandy, we're going to get right into it. But before we get there, I want to, and where we're going is we talked a little bit about it before we went to break, the impact of all these things that are being, planned by Donald Trump and Republicans, and the impact it's going to have on the average person. You know, over 10,000 layoffs thus far, Sandy, not counting the people who've been forced to retire or people who've been terminated. And these are some of the agencies, Sandy, the CDC, the EPA, the IRS. We're not talking about, Sandy, groups and organizations governmental bodies, excuse me, that serve no purpose whatsoever. These are governmental bodies that impact and affect every American in their daily lives.
Yeah, that's the thing. That there's been this discussion about bloat in the federal government on the part of the right and the people who are looking now at taking a meat axe to the government, and they're behaving and talking as if all of the government is bloated, that all of the workers fall into the same category of fat, and that it doesn't matter where they swing this meat axe, they'll only be cutting fat. There won't be any muscle or bone involved. But the fact is that the FAA, the FDA, the OSHA, SEC, FEMA, Medicare, Social Security, most of the people who work in the federal government work for agencies that are there to protect us or to provide us with services. And many of these services require expertise. The EPA's processes of investigating the environment and testing to find out whether things are safe. The FDA, all of that involves a great deal of expertise. They secured 40,000 retirements through this so-called voluntary retirement plan. They've laid off 10,000, talking about laying off hundreds of thousands. First of all, what's been happening to date is absorbable, or would have been absorbable. Normally, apparently, we have about 100,000 people who leave the federal government each year, and they leave voluntarily. They resign. They go off to do something else. But so the numbers, that Elon Musk and the president want to beat their breast about, that they forced out, are really just like the blink of an eye in terms of numbers, and they relate to the numbers that have been leaving the federal government regularly. But what they're proposing to do is to essentially promote people leaving. So this buyout arrangement they had probably promoted a lot of people to leave federal government who were working very hard, who were burnt out, who saw it as an opportunity to leave. What they're doing with the federal government is they're tampering with it, they're experimenting with it, and they're experimenting with a bunch of things that actually have a great deal of local impact.
Sandy, you talked about hundreds of thousands of governmental workers who retire, but a system that allowed them to retire without upending the system, and it was balanced. When people retired, they had in incrementally that they could replace people and not miss a beat. To unilaterally force people to retire across the board throws all that out of kilter. Is it safe to say that, Sandy?
Well, yeah. If you look at things that are going to affect us locally, if they start cutting Medicaid dollars, that's all a local impact. That has to do with who can receive medical attention and who will get reimbursed for providing it. The grant dollars they're cutting, and they've already done this, is going to have a huge impact on places like the University of Wisconsin, who are very reliant for a great deal of what they do on the grant money that they attract and the primary research that is funded by it. We're going to lose farm and construction workers with this attack on immigrants. And the inflation that's going to result from the tariffs that they're implementing is going to be affected. That's where that's experienced at the grocery store. That's about as local as you can get. At the appliance store, when you have to replace your washing machine or your television, that's where this tariff is going to be affected. When the supply chains get disrupted, which they are already in the process of being, everything will go into shortage. And that will cause the same effect that it did at the end of the pandemic, which is inflation. When automobiles go up in price, where do you experience that? You experience that locally when you go to the car dealer. So, people can talk about and maybe lean back and say, well, we don't have to worry about this. This is all national. No, the rubber hits the road down the block.
Sandy, people, the grocery store, which was one of the things that was talked about more than anything else during the presidential election. And it's gotten worse. I talk to people who go to the grocery store, Sandy, the very thing that they condemn Joe Biden and the Democrats for, the prices have gone up in the grocery stores.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet they're not attempting to do anything to mitigate that, Sandy. There's no policy I've heard from Donald Trump or any of his minions to address that.
Well, they've not announced any policy that has any impact whatsoever on the problems of Tom, Dick, and Mary. You know, we've got a president who a couple of days ago quoted Napoleon Bonaparte. I don't know how many presidents think Napoleon Bonaparte is a good person to quote.
Sandy, hold that
Saying-
thought, because I want you to make sure you give that thought on the other side where people can hear it. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. We're going to talk about a lot of things this morning on the Earl Ingram Show.
And people let me be just what I want to be. misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing, and there's no way we ever could. Now we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above the beating. So we keep on waiting, yeah, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, yeah, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the
Sandy, you must have
system.
been reading my mind this morning.
At a distance. So we keep on waiting, yeah.
All right, 855-752-4842. You can text us that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. Sandy, that music.
Well, I was thinking about how everything that's going on ultimately is local and how it affects us locally and how we can feel helpless in the face of national things that are going to have impacts on us locally. So I look for music that might suggest those issues, and this stuff, that one was Taj Mahal and Keb Mo, but that's what the music's about.
You know, Sandy, before we go to the phone lines, there isn't going to be a cavalry that's going to come and save us. People are waiting for something to happen to change the trajectory of where we're headed right now. And it's so early in this presidency. But there isn't going to be a cavalry that comes to save us.
Well, the problem is, and what I was going to say before the break was that this president a couple of days ago, quoting Napoleon Bonaparte, put out tweets, and he did it quite aggressively. He put it out both on Truth Social and on Twitter, because he clearly means this and wants the audience to understand it. He said, "He who saves his country breaks no law." And so what he's basically saying is, as far as he's concerned, the end justifies the means, and that anything he does in pursuit of that end is above the law and cannot be impeded by the law. And so, Elon Musk has talked the same way. He's talked about impeaching judges that might issue stay orders against the activity of Doge, where the court might view that it exceeds the constitutional powers of the government or breaks the law. And their reaction to that is, well, then we have to get rid of the judges. We have to take action to make sure that we can operate because we have the claim is that they have an imperial mandate that runs to the presidency and allows the presidency to do whatever in order to achieve ends that would be defined apparently by the president. And it's a frightening prospect. It is the definition of authoritarianism. And my surprise is that the MAGA part of the Republican Party seems to be embracing authoritarianism as a form of government that they want to pursue, in spite of the fact that these are the same people who keep reciting the Constitution as being something they want to protect, when this is a direct assault on the Constitution.
855-752-4842 is the number. Let's go to Brendan. Hey, good morning to you, Brendan. You say what?
Yeah, listen, this is a class war, pure and simple. Okay, not only have we gone into an authoritarian government, we have oligarchs that are basically calling the shots. Donald Trump isn't smart enough to pull any of this off. He's just the carnival barker out in front of all these knuckleheads who have all this money and are going to run our government. And folks like Mark here from Wisconsin, who's on the chat, you guys should join the chat. It's interesting. Are so happy that they're going to the government. Yet the Doge page that's on the government site doesn't have a thing on it yet. And they're all gullible enough to believe that what they're doing is they're trying to cut waste and get rid of ridiculous spending. No, all they're doing is they're firing people. They fired people from the National Nuclear Security Administration on Friday, realized what a bonehead move they made, and then had to beg them all to come back. And I know this for a fact because my daughter has a friend that works there. So, yeah, good job, guys. Good job. And all the MAGA folks and all the Republicans that think this is a good thing, well, guess what? Your come-ups are coming. And have you heard him mention anything about Kentucky? And Georgia? He just burned Georgia when they were they took the money that Georgia was getting for the storms they had. So good job, you guys. Keep it up. Can't wait to see more.
Hey, Brendan, thank you very much for the call. You know, Sandy, you talked about MAGA, and so the average MAGA guy like Mark, who's texting, who, you know, he's harmless. He doesn't understand
Well, I think
any of
Mark's
these things.
I think Mark's an attorney. I think he's a sophisticated person. I just think that a bunch of people need to sit back and think about the long-term ramifications of what's going on nationally, and instead of believing that it's simply going to solve the problem that they have, they should understand that the Trump that was elected by less than a majority of people. And he was elected based on the things that were talked about during the campaign. And so, you know, the premise of Project 2025 is that the president is elected by the people, and therefore he is the populist manifestation of the people, and he can do the people's bidding. But what's going on now is not the people's bidding. I mean, what we've got is these oligarchs, simply oligarchs, getting the government out of their own way. What they are busily doing is trying to take government and get it out of the way of the wealthy and the powerful, the corporate interests and the private interests for whom government operates and regulates. They're trying to get rid of those nasty, pesky, annoying regulations, and so the conduct now is not designed to help Tom, Dick, and Mary. In fact, Tom, Dick, and Mary are being warned that there's going to be some pain here, folks, and you're going to have to bear with this pain until we get what we want. Well, I'm not sure what they want. You know, the end game here isn't very clear, but the near-term game is very clear, and that is getting government out of the way.
So, Sandy, to tell Tom, Dick, and Mary that there's going to be some pain after Tom, Dick, and Mary said that the reason we don't want Joe Biden back and the Democrats back is because of the pain that we've been experiencing. And so I don't understand how Tom, Dick, and Mary, after saying the Democrats caused them all this pain, are going to somehow accept even more pain than what they said they felt under Joe Biden and the Democrats. Clearly, the different things that they're going after, Sandy, Medicare and all those things, far outstripe whatever pain it was they were saying that they got from Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Well, absolutely. And what surprises me is that the number of people who are biting on this concept that the people who work for the government, this deep state, are a bunch of bureaucrats who are operating independently from the law and are basically subjugating the American public to a power that was not elected. Here's what bureaucrats do in government. They implement the law. These are the people who carry out the laws that are passed by Congress. Congress passes laws, but they need to be implemented. Well, who implements the laws? Not the elected officials. No, it's the people who get hired by the government to use their expertise to carry out what is the law. And so this assault on the bureaucrats is actually a direct assault on the people who carry out the laws, who implement the laws. These people are not lawless, they are the law. And yes, they have to be, their feet have to be held to the fire to make sure that the things they do are within the law, okay? And that's what lawyers do. You know, every time a regulation gets implemented against a corporation, the corporation has the opportunity to go to court and contest whether that law was properly implemented. Every time an agency issues a regulation, the regulation must get promulgated through a process that includes the potential for it to be tested in court, and most regulations are tested in court. And so what we've got is a direct assault on the people who carry out the law, and furthermore, a direct compromising of the people who enforce the law. So we've got the U.S. attorney's offices. Look at the one in New York, the U.S. attorney for the District of New York, who's being totally compromised politically to operate as a political lapdog for the president, a political attack dog for the president. And that there's a U.S. attorney local in every jurisdiction around the country. And so in Wisconsin, we have numerous U.S. attorneys who will now be politically responsive to the president instead of implementing the law on a straightforward and even-handed basis.
You know, Sandy, we're in an arena now where the average citizen doesn't comprehend the legalese of what is transpiring that's going to impact them, so swiftly. They can't prepare for it. And then at the same time that all these things are going on, Sandy, they're cutting away the safety nets. And I don't know what could be more cruel than that, Sandy. They know they're cutting away the safety nets. And they don't care whatsoever about it. Medicare, as you already know.
Well, Medicaid.
Yeah, Medicaid.
Medicaid.
The children and the elderly. Okay, and the disabled. The disabled.
Yeah, the Medicaid is basically children and disabled and the poor, and to attack funding for that, and then puts both the providers of the healthcare at risk. How does Aurora Hospital or any others get reimbursed for providing the care for these people? Number one, or did they turn their backs on those people? They can't as a matter of law, and so this is just government ducking its responsibilities. And we can have another show about this, but I can demonstrate how healthcare for all is something that because we are not providing it, is implementing the way it's now being implemented through Medicaid and Medicare is very destructive socially, and is creating all kinds of pressures that are destructive socially to our country. And it's many of the things that conservatives are upset about. And if they step back a bit, they'd realize. But in any case, we've got things going on that, if they happen singularly, would be consuming the press. This Eric Adams situation in New York, calling off the prosecutorial dogs, but not throwing the case out, simply saying they're suspending the prosecution, and saying at the same breath that it's a very strong case, but we're suspending it because this guy needs to be there to help us implement our immigration policies, is to put this mayor of New York on a leash such that he is now at heel to the president of the United States. It's a completely corrupt kind of a concept, so corrupt that numbers of U.S. attorneys resigned rather than back off on the prosecution, and now 4 of the assistant mayors have resigned as well.
Well, Sandy, so right before our eyes, we're watching all of this crumble, and it gets worse every day. And I wonder sometimes, again, when we talk about MAGA, we talk about the rank and file MAGA members, Sandy, but I'm talking about the congressional MAGA people who should know better. Sandy, they know that this is going to impact and affect their constituents. Why are they not fighting for their constituents?
Well, I mean, one of the problems is that there is a limit to what Congress can do to get in the way of the president. Congress is there to pass laws and to rescind laws and to amend laws. And the president is now operating in the range of the imperial power of the presidency and trying to expand it to beyond the edge of the envelope, and is doing so as we speak. But these people in Congress should be standing up and at least showing their backbone and demonstrating that they aren't in line with the president, and his conduct will cause him to lose the support of Congress, which he needs when he decides to propose policies that do require congressional action.
Sandy, I'm just really amazed at how you use imperial power for the president of the United States. It's flowing now from you. And that's an amazing thing. Hang on. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my call. Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
Keep on waiting. Yeah, waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a pink one and a green one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. And the people in the houses all went to the university where they were put in boxes, and they came out all the same. And there's doctors and lawyers and business executives, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Our conversation is really about a lot of different things, but Sandy, as I said earlier, there is no cavalry coming. We're waiting for maybe some miracle to happen, but I don't foresee a miracle coming. We're going to have to get through. You keep using the term imperial and president as if they're one and the same. Have we gotten to that point now, Sandy? Sandy, can't hear you. We can't hear you.
In Project 2025 is to create, to go to the extent possible of having an imperial president, one who has all of the power vested in him, and shifts the power, the balance of power, dramatically in the direction of the executive. And it's a very dangerous concept, but it's one that's being pursued full stop by MAGA and by the policies being implemented right now. And it is very hard to stop. The only thing that can get in the way of the effort of the president to expand the power in the direction of having an imperial presidency are the courts. And, the courts have this problem in that they don't have a method for enforcing their orders. If the court has the backbone to stand up to this president, and if the Supreme Court decides to constrain his conduct, they still have to order him to stop, and he has to abide by it. And he might not. He's already talking about not. And this quote from Napoleon Bonaparte suggests that he fully intends not to, that he is above the law and the law as defined by the courts.
Let's go to Tom from LA. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what?
Good morning, Earl. First, let's not forget, like Sandy said about the Congress. Look, the Congress okayed, the Republican mega Congress okayed all of the different people in all of the different offices, whether it's Pete Hegseth, whether it is any of the different people. Congress did have an opportunity to stop this in its tracks. Let's not forget what it is that they did. Number two, MAGAs, Republicans, I appeal to you. I tell you, you won. You won everything. You made us live. You owned us, the whole thing. Could you please do us a favor? We, the American people, are we going to have to go through the school of hard knocks and go back to the Great Depression times, which hurts all of us? Or are we going to stop this bleeding right now? Honestly, I really don't know. If people can't pick up a history book and see what happened 100 years ago, except for we have our own Adolf Hitler probably right here in the United States, of what is going on. Don't look at today's world. Look at 100 years ago, because it's just basically history repeating itself. And do we really have to go through the Great Depression, bread lines, poor of poor, uber wealthy versus the poor, and us middle class become the poor? Do we really have to live this experiment again? Or could you please just join us, get out into the streets with us, and actually make it so we actually get our democracy back by also getting money out of politics? Let's have a revolution. Let's have a peaceful revolution But let's get this. Let's not do it through the school of hard knocks. Let's do it through what we learned from history, so we don't repeat it. Thank you, Earl.
Hey, Tom. Very well said. Thank you very much for those heartfelt words. And Sandy, that's kind of how I'm feeling. The more I hear and the more I see what's taking place, um, if it can be stopped. And, I think Trump and those people around him are getting stronger.
Well,
And their footprint, Sandy, is not just America.
no,
It's the world.
no, that's what's terrifying to me is that they believe that they have a movement that they're responsible for. And you watch our vice president go to Europe and scold Europe for not allowing the right wing to take control in Germany, for instance, not to have a seat at the table in Germany where the right wing brought that country to devastation some while ago. And here we are running around the world scolding them, telling them how government ought to operate. I mean, it's a terrifying thing. And I agree with Tom that the problem I foresee is that what the MAGAs are doing are fixing what really isn't broken, okay, trying to fix it. They're breaking it. And the outcome of what they're doing, a massive tariff regime on top of the other policies they're adopting, has the potential to create a very dangerous, deep stagflation kind of recession that will hurt everybody.
All right, 855-752-4842. Guys, hang on. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
And the boys go into business and marry and raise a family in boxes made of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. There's a pink one and a green one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
All right, Earl, did you want to do your promo real quick?
Hello.
Yo.
Yeah, I'm calling from MATC General Counsel Office.
All right, we'll wait for the next segment around 3:30.
No, that's old.
You get a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove.
Sandy's very thoughtful music this morning. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. It's certainly fitting my mood. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you, Sandy, the music.
Well, it's about the impact of the frustrations you can have locally when you watch government happening around you and you wonder what you can do about it and whether you can do anything about it. And I think the lesson that I'm learning from the experience I'm having is that we all have to try and do something about it. We can't let this happen. You know, there were other countries and other times, and I know people say it's hysterical to point back at Germany, but you know, the drift into authoritarianism happens, and it's a bit like the frog in the pot with the heat in the water. You know, the water starts out cold, it gets warm, it's still tolerable, and before you know it, it's boiling and you're done. And so we can't let the people around us put on brown shirts without doing something about it.
You know, Sandy, we just Let's do this. Let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. You say what? Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you big time as far as being frustrated. But I'll tell you that the more I look into this stuff, and the more I do my civic duty of trying to figure out what they're talking about when we hear Trump talk about massive fraud and abuse. There isn't anything there. The press secretary, White House press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, when asked to provide examples, all she did basically was roll out DEI programs that they disagreed with. Well, that's a policy challenge. It's not illegal. It's not a crime. Might be an example of waste, but that's something for Congress to settle out. Let Congress do their job. But I'm with you. I'm with you guys. It's very tough watching this imperialism develop. It's the loudest voice in the room that seems to be dominating common sense.
Mike?
The big message for me today is this is all unnecessary. The economy is strong. The pie pieces are just distributed wrong. That's it. You take care of redistribution in making the elites in the top 1% pay their fair share, and this thing completely changes. But again, while they continue their lies and their claims of massive fraud, somehow the American people are falling for the big lie and that their tactics all over again. It's really frustrating as a student of history, and I know you're feeling this way, Sandy, as well. When we are going down a similar paths that were disastrous, it's never been a good thing for we the people when America took austerity measures. It's not a good thing. It's always constricting.
Well, Mike, when you talk about austerity measures, it would be different if they weren't doing this because they're going to get these tremendous tax cuts. That's the reason behind all of it, is enriching themselves at the expense of the American people. Sandy?
Well, and the thing that's clear to me is that all of this talk that's gone on for the last 5 years, in which there's been a fog put up around the truth and about facts, and allowing people to use words willy-nilly to mean whatever they choose, is now coming back to haunt us, because we have Elon Musk, we have the president, we have everyone else talking about corruption and fraud, when what they're really talking about is programmatic differences they have with what's going on. Having DEI programs is not fraudulent, and it's not corrupt. And yet that's the kind of thing that is being aimed at with the slashing that's going on in government. We have Elon Musk telling the president, and the president repeating to the people, the fact that there are tens and hundreds of billions of dollars of corruption and fraud, and yet they've not come forward with a single example of something that amounts to corruption or fraud. And that's because we've allowed the world to adopt language and to adopt meanings for words that are totally fictional. And we've allowed fiction to replace fact in the world of politics. And now it's coming back to haunt us.
Sandy, I was reading this morning, and thank you very much for the call, Mike. I can tell in your voice you're feeling the same way that I am. Sandy, they were talking about all of these people on Social Security who are over 120 years old. And so we found, thousands and thousands of people 120 years old still getting Social Security check. Well, I mean, they're saying that, Sandy, like you said, they haven't been able to prove any of that, and they throw that out there, and it supports the things that they're doing. Because there are people who in this country, and not all, because half of the people in this country don't agree with any of that madness. Yet we're trapped in that, Sandy. We're trapped in what the other half of the American people support.
Well, and just people should project, the people who are supporting what's going on should project this forward in time to the time when a Democrat is in office and
Yeah.
is doing and carrying out the same sort of purge of government employees and the same sort of shift in policies unilaterally based on a so-called mandate, when the United States hasn't had a presidential mandate of any substantial form for decades and decades.
Let's go to Tony from Madison. Good morning to you, Tony. You say what?
Well, good morning, Earl.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for the call.
So where are all the Democrats in this? For every executive order that President Trump issued, shouldn't there have been a lawsuit issued by the group of Democrats congealed together for all of this?
Well, Sandy's the barrister. He'll respond to your.
Well, there
Good
have
question.
been a whole spate of lawsuits filed with respect to executive orders. And the fact is that maybe the Democratic Party as an organization was not ready for what's going on, because we have 500 plus executive orders, some of which relate to plastic straws rather than paper straws, and some of which have a huge amount of substantive impact. And I think that the triage on that is that the ones with substantive impact have been brought to the attention of the judicial organization, courts around the country. But here's the problem: courts take time, even when they act quickly, and courts have limited capacity to enforce their orders. And so we have an executive who has basically decided to thumb his nose at the courts, and has thumbed his nose at the courts for an entire lifetime.
Tony?
Okay.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Susan from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Susan. You say what?
Good morning. Getting back to the city of Milwaukee and public schools and the police department. I have some expertise, obviously, in that field. And I was working when we had police officers in the schools. This created a problem for the city of Milwaukee. And the reason why, if you pull officers off the street and put them in the schools, you have less officers on the street. Less officers on the street means crime on the street escalates. So by doing what the courts are doing, they are putting the police department in a stranglehold because they don't have enough officers to plenish the schools and the streets at the same time. And I guess nobody thought about this, because it takes a long time to train an officer to go onto the streets, and it's very costly. And I don't think that what they're doing is appropriate. They have school security officers, and if they need officers, then the police department can send the officers to the school. But by taking police officers off the streets, this makes it much more difficult for the officers to respond to the calls. And I guess nobody really thought about that. And until the police department gets a sizable increase to hire more police officers, this will continue on. And where does the police department in the city get their money, their increases? They're going to have to increase the property taxes and the taxes on goods in the city of Milwaukee. There you go.
Hey, Susan, thank you very much for the call. I concur. with what you were saying. They can't find enough police officers right now. The city has gone across the state and other places recruiting new police officers. They can't find them. Thank you very much for the call. 855-752-4842. Sandy, Congress is closing in on the shutdown deadline with no clear plan. This may be a time, you've always said, Sandy, they're not going to shut down. But based on what's happening today, we may see the shutdown. I'd like to hear your thoughts. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays and my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
Had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. We got a fast car. We go cruise and entertain ourselves. Still ain't got a job. Now work in the market as a checkout girl. I know things will get better. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. You know, it's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays. My co-host Sandy Williams. Sandy, you say what? Can't hear you.
All politics is local.
All right.
And so the music basically reflects the fact that whatever happens ends up happening locally, and that's how we experience it. And my concern is that what's happening nationally is coming home to roost locally, and it's going to come home quickly and with lots of damage.
You know, last night when I was at the Democratic gathering and spoke after one of the state Supreme Court justices, County Executive David Crowley spoke. And Sandy, he spoke about the impact of what's getting ready to happen here in Milwaukee County with the unstable issues that they are seeing and concerned about coming down the pike. He said that's their fear is, you can't run the county government if you're not getting, support from the federal government, Sandy. And as you said, that impacts all sorts of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Medicaid dollars are right at the heart of many people's personal issues, and at the heart of local funding issues, both funding from the county standpoint and as well reimbursement from the hospitals and medical system.
All right, let's go to Chad from Greenfield. Good morning to you, Chad. You say what?
Hey guys, long time no talk. First call since President Trump won the election. First of all, I just want to begin by saying happy belated President's Day to the greatest president of my lifetime, President Donald J. Trump. I don't know.
Chad, it's pretty clear if he's the greatest president of your lifetime, you haven't lived a very long life.
I'm 50 years old, sir, and I'd love to go over all those accomplishments. But first of all, let me answer Tom's question about joining him. Tom, absolutely not. We will not join you. When are you guys ever going to learn your lesson? Tom compared right on your program.
Hey, Chad. Chad, this is not a conversation between you and Tom. What do you have to say in regards to what we're talking about?
I'm going to say this right now. I'll say right now, you guys do not learn your lesson. You're comparing Hitler. You let President Trump being compared to Hitler again. Tom Hanks goes on and says about racist Trump supporters that and already you guys don't learn. President Trump has over a 50% approval rate. He's doing what people want. His appearances at Daytona 500, his appearance at the Super Bowl, he's getting just ovations that we haven't seen.
Hey, Chad, you're talking about him. Let me respond to this first. You're talking about him being at a Super Bowl or at a racetrack and the ovations that he's getting. What percentage of people do you think that includes at a racetrack or at a Super Bowl? 100,000, 50,000?
Well, I'll tell you.
Come on, man.
Well, hey, his last approval rating's over 50% or all.
Chad, let me just, you've called in sort of randomly without much that you want to affirmatively say. Let me ask you some questions, though. Do you agree with what's going on in the city of New York with respect to the mayor of New York? Do you think that you see political danger? Do you see the problem of potential corruption of public officials with respect to what's going on with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the city of New York? Does that trouble you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I disagree with everything in New York because they prosecuted President Trump using weaponization.
So do you think that the mayor of a city ought to be, the prosecution of the mayor of a city ought to be called off so that he can better coordinate with the policies of the president and be under the president's thumb? Do you think that's a safe place for American politics?
If they're not going to follow the rules that have been established for harboring illegal aliens. Well, right now you cannot harbor. This has been a long time. You cannot harbor illegal aliens. And Governor Hochuli and that with James, they're trying to do that. So now, where do the rules apply? Now, again, let me ask you.
Hey, Chad.
Proficiently.
Hey, Chad. This is not about you asking us questions. I will say this to you. So you're talking about the rules that they're not following. There's a mayor who clearly has been indicted or was about to be indicted for laws that he broke. And Donald Trump comes in and his minions and they wipe all that away. You think that's a good thing?
I'll tell you what. First of all, you guys love this mayor until he sided with President Trump.
Here's the issue, Chad. I have. I'm not talking about policy, and I'm not particularly strident about any particular policies. I am strident about procedure. Do you think that this president is entitled to ignore laws and to implement whatever it is he wants to implement in the way of policies, regardless of the law?
Well, just like the governor of New York and James
No.
No.
This is
disregarding
no.
law of illegal aliens. You guys think that's okay? Now,
No,
President Trump.
look. I
Well,
don't
this
think
is
you guys. The question is
thank you, man.
whether we ought to allow a president to run roughshod over the laws, whether we ought to really agree with the president that he who thinks he's saving the country is above the law. And to me, that's the most dangerous prospect here. Process, not policy. Policy comes and goes. Policy changes with the winds. Policy changes with the times. Policy changes with politics. But procedures have to endure.
Sandy, you didn't register. Nothing you said registered with Chad because there are guys like that, and unfortunately, far too many who aren't going to be able to see until these policies impact and affect them directly. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays. My co-host Sandy Williams and you more on the Earl Ingram Show.
That you don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Hey, farmer, put away the DDT now. Give me spots on the apples, or leave me the birds and the bees. Please don't, it always seems to go that you don't.
All right, when you're ready.
All right. It's Wednesday, and I'm excited to welcome Dr. Craig from. No, that's wrong. So Dr. Craig is from Citizen Action.
From Citizen Action?
Yeah. Okay. So let me do it like this. Okay, let me do it. You ready?
Yep.
You ain't got to don't change anything.
Okay.
Okay. It's Wednesday, and I'm excited to welcome the Get the Lead Out Coalition. Where is it at?
So I just put
Dr. Craig comes on after the Get the Lead Out Coalition. So you got to put the let's just do this.
Hey, we'll come back to it. I got like 15 seconds.
Okay.
The wheels are muddy. Whoa, oh, mercy, mercy me. All things ain't what they used to be now. Where did all the blue skies go? Poison is the wind that blows from the north and south and east. Oh, mercy, mercy me. All things ain't what they used to be. No, no.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays. My co-host Sandy Williams, Sandy the Music.
Yeah, it's about local, basically frustration, local politics and the extent to which we can all be frustrated about the extent to which what's going on nationally is going to affect us locally and what can we do about it.
You know, Sandy, what's so frightening is people like Chad who calls and goes back to that you guys and not understanding that Donald Trump, the world already, Sandy. The world is destabilized. And a guy like Chad and others like him are still playing this game about you guys had your chance. Man, he doesn't even see, Sandy, he can't even visualize the inherent danger that we're facing right now.
You know, I have a sense that people like people in MAGA who are so committed and conditioned to believe everything that Donald Trump does is the right thing, have projected his narcissism onto themselves and have decided that he's their guy. And whatever he does, regardless of what it is and whether he's ever talked about it before, whether they voted for it, whether anyone understood that that's what was the implication of electing Donald Trump, that regardless of that, their guy has been elected, and Katie bar the door, he's free to do as he chooses because they've imprinted on him. And I don't understand it, quite frankly, because what he's doing around the world is breathtaking, and what he's doing in this country is breathtaking in terms of unilaterally carrying out activities which seem to be, number one, without much counsel, without much advice from experts. It's sort of amateurs playing a game in public with us.
So, Sandy, how many presidents has there been, it's a rhetorical question, that built kind of goodwill with the European nations and goodwill around the world for one man to come and destroy that? You know, he's doing it. I don't know if he's aware, Sandy, that he's doing it. Your take on that?
Well, I think it's people who don't remember the fact that the great wars of the 20th century were all fought between Europeans in Europe. And one of the reasons that we've had this alliance with Europe after World War II was that we needed peace in the world, and we need Europe to be a peaceful place. I mean, there has been a European war. There have been 2 European wars since 1990. We had the Bosnian, Herzegovina, Serbia, Kosovo, Croatia eruption, and now we have the Ukrainian war. So, I mean, you know, the wars that we have not participated in, but which have been substantial, chaotic wars, occurred in Europe. And we're apparently treating Europe now with the back of our hand.
Yeah, it is just, you and I talked a little earlier before we go back to the phone lines about what they're really doing. China is in the background. And so we're lobbying, we're destroying any goodwill that was created between this nation and all these other nations, and we're forcing them where, Sandy?
Well, China is the biggest trading partner for a number of countries, not the United States, but China and a number of European countries. And China runs around the world and does not exact from people any promises with respect to ideological commitments. So unlike J.D. Vance, who goes to Europe and scolds the Europeans for what they're doing internally in their country and their politics, China is a very passive participant in trade. And we're driving people in the direction of China. We're driving Mexico in the direction of China. We're driving Canada in the direction of China. And now we're taking Europe and basically treating it with the back of our hand. Europe, the second biggest trading partner with the European Union is China. And what we're basically doing is promoting the notion that maybe China ought to be their biggest trading partner.
Sandy, long term, really, the damage that they're doing in this short window is long term, right? I mean, those nations aren't going to return back if they're going to find something more comforting in China. I mean, why would they return?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that these things have momentum, and we are killing the momentum associated with the relationship between the United States and Europe, and we're putting them in the direction of having a circumstance which is better for them and makes them less vulnerable. Having a European standing army might be good for Europe, but we didn't think it was a good idea in 1952, and I don't think it'll be a good idea in 2026.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I just think that all of this is being done with short-sightedness, both historical short-sightedness as well as prospective short-sightedness in terms of what the implications are. And I just think that we would be better off operating with much more deliberation and much more counsel and much less knee-jerk and much less ideology.
Sandy, Mark said, Vance essentially said that we are not the sugar daddy anymore. I mean, what is that?
That isn't what I was talking about with respect to Vance's speeches in Europe. What Vance went to Europe about was to talk to them about how they ought to allow the right wing in Europe to have a far greater voice, that they in Europe were afraid of the right wing and they ought to be embracing the right wing. He was scolding them about their local politics. As for whether or not Europe ought to have a sugar daddy or not, or how much military expenditure we ought to make and they ought to make, Mark ought to understand that historically speaking, we organized NATO and we made NATO our client. And NATO became one of the biggest clients of our military industrial complex in terms of its armaments. And we decided that we wanted to dominate NATO so that we would not be participating in European wars in the future. Now, maybe Europe has evolved to the point where, yes, they should be cut loose from our military umbrella to the extent that we currently have it. But that's a policy to be discussed and worked upon and deliberated about. That isn't the problem I have with J.D. Vance and what he did in Europe.
Let's go to Ann. Good morning to you, Ann. Thank you very much. You say what?
Yeah, I just have to say that these MAGAs that call in are just a reflection of Donald Trump until it affects them personally. And as far as Tom goes, he knows more about how government works than this 50-year-old person that called in. And I just have to say, when we go to war, I want to hear from Chad. I want to hear what Chad says, because when his parents lose Medicaid or Medicare, what's Chad going to say then? Because it seems like all they care about is Trump going to the Super Bowl and going to NASCAR. I just think, where are people? Where are Americans? Do they not see what's going on in our country? And you know what? It's not 50%. He can say 50% all he wants. But this girl is not a 50%er. So thank you.
Hey, Ann, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, this divide, if ever there was a time, and we've said on this show, and you've said it many times, trying to bring people back together. But it's almost impossible to bring people back together when the policies, well, not even policies, but the things that are being done are not with trying to bring the nation back together, Sandy. There's nothing that Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are saying and doing to try to bring the nation back together. They're continuing to divide.
Well, in fact, if you read just the introduction to Project 2025, which is now a very telling introduction because it is describing exactly what's going on. They describe there the fact that they believe that the conservatives have a 2-year window to carry out what they describe as a war to change America. It's a revolution and a war against America as it is, to change it into the America that they hope it to be, which is an imperial president and a presidency and a White House that micromanages all of the operations of the U.S. federal government in a manner that reflects an authoritarian. And so what is intended by Project 2025 is not a bringing together of the people. It is not building a consensus. It is taking a 2-year window of time and jamming down the throats of America all the changes that they wish to implement. The laws be damned. And so I think the people, Chad and everyone else, ought to read that introduction to Project 2025 and then as much of Project 2025 as they can stomach, and to understand what it is that's going on and to try and figure out whether they're comfortable with that sort of a concept for government.
Let's go to Jean. Good morning to you, Jean. You say what?
Good morning. Good job, Ann from Chippewa. I'd like to say something because, this reminds me so much of a hostile takeover. I'm sure everybody's familiar with hostile takeovers. We almost had one in Eau Claire area. And they come in, they say there's problems with the business. They start firing all kinds of people. And they fire not the people that should be fired. They fire people who know what's going on, how to run the company, how to get them out of debt, those types of things. And then they raid their pensions. And there's nothing left to save. Now, all these different people they're put in these positions have zero experience, finding all kinds of problems, especially the wealthy ones there, saying all these people are getting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid that shouldn't get it, and there's all this money there. And and who's watching these people? And where are the people who really know what's going on? They've been fired. So wake up, folks, because this is serious business. And this divide and conquer business is chaos. Own the libs. Ooh, they're woke. Well, they better get their heads out of their butts and get woke, because this is serious stuff. And we can do something about it. And you keep going, L.A. Tom. I hear you. We're still here. We're not stopping. Thank you very much.
Hey, Jean, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, the depth of what is transpiring in this country requires a serious reckoning. Congress closing in on shutdown deadline with no clear plan. I don't know. As long as you and I have been together, you've always said, don't worry about the shutdown. It's not going to happen. In this instance, Sandy, I don't know.
Well, this one isn't going to happen either, because as far as Trump is concerned, he's got Doge, and they have the government in the palm of their hand, they think, and they aren't going to suffer the PR problem of a shutdown because they don't need it. But
they don't need the Democrats. They don't need the Democrats.
Well, if the Democrats are willing to shut it down, we'll see. But I think the analogy of a hostile takeover is a good one. But I've been involved with mergers in the corporate world, and when there's a merger, people who want the business to succeed at the end of the merger put together a committee to try and figure out what it is they're going to do about redundancies that might exist in the businesses, and who it is that might get proffered opportunities to retire early or otherwise be laid off. And it's done in a very careful manner, designed to make sure that the business at the end of the merger is better than it was before. That's not the way this is being carried out at all. This is completely a meat axe applied to the federal government.
855-752-4842 is Tuesday. It means Tuesday is my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
living underground and in the sky. Animals and birds who live nearby are nice. Oh, mercy, mercy me. All things and what they used to be. What about this overcrowded land? How much more will you from me? Can't you stand? Oh, no.
Ready?
Right. Give me 1 second just to bring up this. All righty. And we're good to go. Give me 1 second.
It's Wednesday. I'm excited to welcome the Get Out the Lead Coalition to discuss safe drinking water in our society. Later, we will be joined by executive. Let's do it again. Go back.
Go ahead.
Go back to the top.
Okay.
It's Wednesday, and I'm excited to welcome back the Get the Lead Out Coalition to discuss safe drinking water in our society. Later, we will be joined by Executive Director Dr. Robert Craig of Citizen Action.
Gotcha. Perfect.
To the last few minutes of the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday's my co-host, Sandy Williams. And Sandy, I'm just trying to find a ray of sun in all of this, Sandy. And that's what's so frightening to me is, it's getting darker all the time.
Well, what I'm appalled by is the openness and notoriousness of the conduct, for instance, with respect to to Mayor Adams in New York, and the process of compromising publicly, politically, taking control of and corrupting the mayor of New York in an open and notorious manner, or the granting of pardons to people who simply because they convert to being political loyalists, the process of declaring things to be waste and corruption without proof, and then to act on that, the anecdotal misstatements by Elon Musk. Elon Musk adopting the premise that the 60 Minutes show was a criminal show, and criminal because of the way they supposedly edited Kamala Harris's conversation on that show, when now the transcript has been released and it's proven that there was nothing nefarious carried out. People are continuing to carry the big lies forward and to use it as a basis for basically jamming our government in a manner that makes it unrecognizable.
Or Sandy, or Trump barring the Associated Press from Air Force One. I mean, people don't understand the implications of that, Sandy.
Yeah, it's it's just unbelievable, because what's happened is the conduct that used to be scandalous and would probably be actionable if carried out privately is now being carried out publicly, and there's no problem. You know, Elon Musk, a person who relies for federal contracts for a great deal of his wealth, is now in charge of the federal government and is taking control of all of the agencies, and his legion is running through the agencies roughshod, firing people, changing the operations of the it was announced yesterday that he was going to take control of the FAA's
yes,
airport control processes and fix them. Well, normally that's the subject of a great deal of analysis and study, and then contracts are opened up to be bid upon.
bid on.
And here we have somebody just unilaterally deciding, hey, I'm going to take control of the FAA processes and fix them.
Let's go to Bill from McConnell. Good morning to you, Bill. Thank you. You say what?
Thanks, Earl and Sandy. I got a proposal or a question. I want to hear your feedback on it. We are at a constitutional crisis. I think it behooves the judicial side and the legislative side, Democrats, to work together and ask Neil Gorsuch and team, do you want this to be your legacy in the future history books, that it was written, this is how you turned over the government of the United States? Correct me if I'm wrong. It is not. It is against the Constitution to have a foreign national run our budget control and money control. I think it's totally illegal in black and white. I'm going to hang up. I want your retrospect on the judicial and legislative system working together, but holding the Supreme Court accountable. What do you think? I'll hang up. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you, Bill. Sandy?
Well,
Wishful
Elon Musk
thinking?
is a foreigner, but he is also a U.S. citizen. He's got 3 citizenships. He's apparently quite fickle about which country and which passport he can carry. But you know, the problem is we have a division of government. The governments are the elements of our government are supposed to look over one another's shoulders and hold each other accountable. Having 2 of them line up together is sort of contrary to that process. But what we definitely have to do is give the Supreme Court the courage to do what they ought to do. And my fear is that we have a Supreme Court that might be compromised in that regard.
You know, Sandy, all of this is more than what you can take, because again, there is no Superman coming. And those of us who've been around a while, we've never seen our government in a place like this. Not in our lives, Sandy. Maybe before, but have you ever seen our government in a situation such as this?
Well, I've never seen us develop a fictional world like the fictional world we've developed with half or almost half of the people in this country may be persuaded that they're living in a country which is broken, that they're living in a country which is in peril. They're living in a country which needs to be saved by somebody who will come in and act unilaterally in the manner that Donald Trump is acting. Donald Trump puts out a tweet saying a man who saves his country is above the law. Well, save us from what? I mean, the country has had a strong economy. The country, we definitely need to get our moorings with respect to how we run our country. And we need to do that in the manner that is consistent with our Constitution. But our country is not broken, and we don't need to break the country in order to fix it. And what we have ongoing right now is a political regime who has declared our country to be broken and is now treating it in that manner and is in the process breaking the country.
Hey, Sandy, great stuff, man. Really enjoyed it. Thank everybody who made the show. Go, Sandy. I'll see you on Friday. Thank everybody who made the show. Go, Carti, you as well. Up next, Jane Matinee, Greg Bach, Matinee on air. See you guys on tomorrow.